So it's pretty much a foregone conclusion about what the Sri Lankan parliamentary election results are likely to be. And I'm joined by Mr. T.P. Srinivasan, former diplomat and also a columnist on the Lead. And Mr. Srinivasan, your immediate reaction to Mahinda Rajapaksa's SLPP pretty much leading and looking as if it's going to win?
Well, this is no surprise at all. Virtually every observer had predicted that this will happen, that this will be a landslide victory for the SLPP. And we don't know the final figures, but it has turned out to be exactly as predicted. And this trend was visible right from the beginning, since Gotabaya became the president. He could very easily appoint his brother as prime minister, and the two brothers had taken over the country already. And the parliamentary elections just a support to them, in the sense that they can move things around if there is a big majority in parliament. I don't know whether they have a 2/3 majority. If there's a 2/3 majority, they can even change the terms and the service conditions of the president and the prime minister, which is a very happy situation. But the fact that their victory is now reflected in this has several implications for Sri Lanka and for India and for the region altogether.
So this leads me to my next question, which is how does this combination now work for Delhi with Gotabaya as the president and Mahinda as the prime minister?
Well, our own record with the Rajapaksas has not been particularly good. That is really the problem. But of course, in international politics, things are not always the same. We learn to work with people who come to power, and that's been India's policy also. Whoever is in power, even if we don't agree with them 100%, we deal with them and find the commonalities, find the complementarities, and work together. And this has already happened since Gotabaya Rajapaksa became president. So we have forgotten whatever was in the past, because there were a lot of implications of what they did with the Tamils and how the war was fought and what we played. It's all long history when you talk about Sri Lanka. So we don't know where to start. So let us start with the moment he became the president, elected president, and he appointed his brother as the prime minister. And we know both of them. But there are only two elements in that. One is that they have not been very friendly with the minorities in the past. And that has created a certain tension between us and them. Then, of course, the war was won by the Sinhalas, and they played a big role there. And Tamil minority has been virtually decimated, because Rajapaksa started saying that we have no minorities, we are all Sri Lankans. There is no need for the 13th Amendment, etc. But one redeeming factor at that time was the presence of a Sinhala leader who was friendly towards India. So who was prime minister. And as a result of that, there was an element, a pro-Indian element in the administration. But it is his party which has now lost completely. And the people who moved away from the UNP seem to have done better than the UNP itself. Then we had the other, and after Rajapaksa, we had a president who said that he would be very friendly with India. He started off like that. But whenever the question arose about financing, and since the Chinese model was much more attractive to them, like our other neighbors, they, in spite of the fact they put India in the center as far as international relations are concerned, when it came to resources and support for their economy and development, they tended to be closer to Sri Lanka, to China. And this has been the problem, of course, as you know, even Nepal has been influenced by that. So China's what we call the silver bullet diplomacy, that is, shooting with money into these countries.
I'm actually asking whether it has worked for Sri Lanka as a policy, because you had written that Sri Lanka is deep in debt with China and is likely to be worrying for them.
Yes, I'm coming to that. now they are realizing it. But the moment that this was announced as the grand plan of Xi Jinping to dominate the world, as it were, that was very clear. And then it was found very attractive. Pakistan, for example, $40 billion and huge amounts of money. Even though it was a loan, it was very soft kind of loan. But now they realized that the priorities of these countries were changed to suit the needs of the Chinese. You know, if you think about the Habantota, the port, for example, why does Sri Lanka need a port like this? It's almost as large as the country. So much money has been invested there in the name of a loan to Sri Lanka. It means that they are taking on those obligations unnecessarily. And then they're all in some kind of a debt trap. And then they realized, and that is why when Gotabaya became president, when he came to India, he spoke in terms of a balanced relationship. He spoke in terms of India being their priority in Asia, everything like that. But we know very well that when it comes to financial assistance, India is always, responsive when if they bring a project to us. If it is reasonable, we support it. But we don't go and make these gigantic investments, huge airports, huge ports, huge stadia, huge hospital, things which look too large for these small countries. So since we are also a developing country, we try to give them what we can afford to give, and also the technology which is relevant to them and to us. That has been the way in which we have operated in our neighborhood, also in Africa. It was the relevant technology that was being given to them. That was important. But then came all these glamorous technology from Korea and Japan and China. And so they were all dazzled by it. There is a change taking place that they should be aware of this. They should be conscious of it, because India was never exploitative, while China is exploitative, and they are taking away their minerals and their wealth away, the resources. All this realization is coming. And so, but still, I think the problem will be with this new dispensation. They will be ambitious about development projects, because they have come with a big majority, and they would want to, lean onto China. There is another aspect of China which I'm sure you are aware, is the trouble that Sri Lanka has at the United Nations. As you know, there is a resolution of the Human Rights Council asking for an international investigation of the war and what happened before that. And we had supported that resolution. And that was, of course, a little bit of a matter of dispute between us, why India supported that resolution. It was an American resolution, etc. But it is not fully known how much we diluted that resolution. The American resolution was much more harsh. And we could support it because the Americans wanted Indian support, so they went out of their way to make it softer and smoother. But that aspect is not being recognized. And therefore they say, oh, Indians, they are our friends, but why did they go and vote for this resolution? While China did not vote for it. And now, if this situation goes to the Security Council, which is the normal way, that if something is not satisfactorily done at the Human Rights Council level, then it can go to the Security Council. There they have the most valuable veto by the Chinese. We are in the Security Council, but we have no veto. So there's nothing that we can do to help them out, while China alone can support them. So because of these two reasons, I think they may tend to be inclined more towards China than towards India.
That's a fair point you're making. Now, speaking of war crimes, I mean, there are obviously, unhealed wounds as far as the war goes. The war which ended a number of years ago, and which resulted in the loss of a huge number of Tamil lives. And this has been a political, stick in a sense, as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, and the ruling dispensation at the center in India. So now with both the Rajapaksa brothers back in the saddle, how does this change? I mean, does this put more pressure on the center from, say, a state like Tamil Nadu, which is, also going into polls soon? So is the Tamil question still relevant here?
But Tamil question is now only an idea, because the great support that Rajiv Gandhi gave to the Tamils and the agreement that he extracted them from, he had to pay with his life. You know. And but the idea was the 13th Amendment, where there was a political settlement of the issue. And that was the agreement we had. But now nobody's talking about it. As I said, they're saying that there is no minority. We are all Sinhalas or all Sri Lankans. So, and therefore, this the Tamil minority has lost its relevance in Sri Lankan politics. Of course, unless they have a political settlement, it will not be permanent. This is the advice that we keep giving them. One Prabhakaran is gone, but if they don't act imaginatively, another Prabhakaran will be born. So, and that is the advice that we have been giving them very firmly and fully supportive of their position that terrorism should be suppressed. But the feelings of, of deprivation that the Sri Lankan has, it will grow. So our advice still is, number one, settle these Tamils, whoever is survived, give them some basic comforts. And that is why we were giving a lot of money for that purpose. But that they did not fully utilize it. They were utilizing it everywhere. And therefore, there is a problem. And there is no Tamil leadership. Of course, the Tamil party is contesting in some places. We don't know whether they are able to win. Maybe they have won some in Jaffna and other areas. But that will be a very minor party, and they will not have much of an influence. And what did India do during the war? We did not intervene in the war. And that is something that Sri Lanka should acknowledge and appreciate. Because the best that they could do, we could not fight on the Sri Lankan side. But by simply keeping out of the war, we were supporting the idea of a united Sri Lanka. And so that is one thing that should go as a plus point for us. And the other thing is our cultural link. All these Sri Lankan leaders, they swear by Buddhism. They all come to India for nothing. Even if they don't want to come to Delhi, they will go to Bodh Gaya. And that link we have, and it's very important. And we nurture it, we nourish it, and we go by their wish on this. Recently, you must have heard about this controversy that India was going to send troops into Sri Lanka to help them. I mean, there was no such proposal. In fact, I had proposed, I wrote that United Nations should set up an armed force to deal with the pandemic. Because initially, all this came to the developed countries, Italy and Spain and USA and so on. They have the resources. But suppose it has not happened yet. Suppose this affects the Africans and the Latin Americans and poor countries of Asia. Who is there to support them? So there was a logic in the United Nations having like the blue berets for peacekeeping. Let's have red berets for health keeping. I suggested that nobody would touch it. They said, no. Sovereignty will be a big issue. Where is the money? All those. But God forbid if there is a big problem like that. But what India did was that we have a rapid support force. It did not mean the army. But the prejudice about the Indian army is so much in our region, Afghanistan. Even Bangladesh said, no, we don't want any force. The force did not mean people with guns. But we are saying that we could send doctors and nurses, etc. Though we ourselves are short of them. We expressed that this willingness, and one or two countries I think we did send. But in our neighborhood, there was a big confusion. And we had to go out of our way to clarify that we made no such offer. And if there is somebody. So I'm referring to the deep-seated suspicion. They immediately are thinking of the IPKF. But IPKF also, we are the ones who suffered. 1,000 soldiers died there, Indian soldiers died there. So I don't know, in our relationship with our neighbors, we have this big dilemma of how much you help them. You know about the Gujral doctrine. Mr. Gujral, who was my ambassador in Moscow, great friend. He started this theory. He used to discuss it with us. He said, we must be, we should not bully the neighbors, give them whatever they want, even if they don't give us anything in return. We tried that. Mr. Gujral became Prime Minister. He tried that. He withdrew IPKF out of the blue, and various other countries. In case of Nepal also, when there was this area of Kala Pani being discussed, he said, okay, we'll discuss it. And when Mr. Modi went to Nepal, he said, you want to change the treaty? Please change. So where have been so adamant about this? But we need to, because Gujarat Doctrine failed because these countries, while they accepted all the benefits of the Gujarat Doctrine, they didn't reciprocate it. And therefore, we are back to the old situation where we insist on reciprocity.
But that's also, in a sense, India is seen as a bully in the subcontinent, isn't it?
Yes, it is seen as a, but then you have Chanakya on your side. You know, centuries ago, he said that you cannot trust your neighbors. He said, don't expect your neighbors to be friendly with you. And that is a law, that's a rule. He advised the kings to do that. Don't look at your neighbors because they'll always be envious of you. They'll always be suspicious of you. So don't go one further. Go to Southeast Asia, go to Japan, go to Australia, go to the Gulf. They are not our neighbors, but near neighbors. And this is what Chanakya taught us.
Basically, be mean to the people who are around you, and be nice to the big brothers who are a little further away. That's the idea.
Yes, this big brother is a notion they have. I'll understand. If I'm a Sri Lankan looking at the map of South Asia, you will say, my God, this country, it looks like a dagger into Sri Lanka, right? If you look at the map. So naturally, they will have that suspicion. And some of our leaders, some of our officials, some of our diplomats may have behaved in a particular way. They used to call them the viceroys and things like that. But one joke was that we used to send only short ambassadors to these countries. Instead. So in order to not to look like the big brother. This was one of the jokes of Mr. Dikshit. Because General Zia of Pakistan went to all the India's neighbors once on a visit. And when he reached Sri Lanka, he found Mr. Dikshit, also a very short person. So he asked, Zia as a joke, he asked Mr. Dikshit, how come I went to Bangladesh, Mr. Chabda, there, a short man. I went to Maldives, there's a short man. What is wrong with India? Why are you sending only these short gentlemen, including Dikshit, to these countries? He said, President, don't you know our tactic? We don't want them to think that we are their big brothers. So we particularly select short but smart ambassadors. So that is the story. But anyway, but we should wish the Rajapaksas well. I'm sure we will go out of their way to be friendly and considerate to them. We will certainly do not want them to completely identify themselves with China, and particularly in this present context, because it was a big surprise that at the middle of the pandemic, they invade India virtually. It's not just an intrusion. And even today, they have not disengaged. So what are we going to do? And we have, of course, much more international support, but that international support has not come from our neighborhood. It has come from the United States, it has come from France, it has come from, even Russia has not been particularly friendly in this case, because Russia has a kind of alliance forming. And what China is doing is to push us into the arms of the Americans. In fact, Prime Minister Modi was trying to reset our relations, China and Russia, after his honeymoon with Barack Obama. And when President Trump came, at that time, both the Chinese and the Russians gave some signals to us that we are not very happy that you are depending too much on the Americans. That's why he went to Wuhan, he went to Sochi, then he brought the president to Mamallapuram. And the way they looked and talked to each other, would you ever think that they'll go to war? So what is this? Are we underestimating the Chinese? Don't we know them? And every time they do something, it's a surprise for us. Centuries-old civilization, relationship, and so on. Don't you understand them? Do we have to again go and read Confucius again? So this is the issue. But certainly we hope that Sri Lanka, under this new dispensation with the comfortable majority, because most often countries behave strangely when they have internal problems and pressure. That people say China also is behaving like this because they have some problems within the party. We don't know. But so with a confident SLPP, the brothers in position, comfortable majority, they can change whatever they want, and India has been friendly. So let us hope that this will be a new chapter of good relationship between India and Sri Lanka.
My last question to you, sir, and this is a very important, especially since I'm sitting here in Tamil Nadu and speaking with you. It's a very emotive issue in Tamil Nadu. Now, there are worries that the Rajapaksa brothers would end up being very authoritarian and perhaps even harm the ethnic minorities in Sri Lanka. Like you said, I mean, Rajapaksa Mahinda has himself said there are no minorities. So, does that concern you? Is that a concern that...
No, that word I didn't get. What did you say?
Authoritarian.
Authoritarian against their own people.
Yes.
Well, they are now democratically elected. This is one confusion with all of us. You elect somebody with a huge majority, and then you say, don't follow your manifesto. How is it possible? When you elect somebody, the same thing is happening in India. The Ram temple, they said we will build the Ram temple, then you elect them, right? Then why are you surprised they are building the Ram temple? So in a democracy, at least you should give them some time. I mean, if they make mistakes, if they do fundamental things, altering the constitution, etc., I suppose. But what Mr. Modi has been doing is basically implement what he promised. So when they are in position and the opposition is so weak, what else do you expect? So to call it authoritarianism, I don't know. We have to see it in that, but they have a majority, the people have just voted them. That has a certain meaning, which gives them a certain authority, and that flexibility they should have. So let us not jump to any conclusion. I think we should, recommend to our Tamil friends that let us give them some time and watch the way they are going to go.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Srinivasan. It's been a pleasure as always. And we'll catch up another time on another issue that is related to foreign affairs.
Very good. There's a new relationship with the Lede. So far, I've been only writing columns.
Yes.
I'm appearing before you for questioning.
This is great.